Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Deviant Mind. This is Dominika.
And this is Christopher.
And thank you for coming back to us on part 3 of Lori Vallow Daybell. Sorry that we missed a week, but I was out at a conference and I somehow stupidly thought that I would have time to actually record it at said conference. But of course, that didn't.
You were busy.
I was busy schmoozing other authors. So we're back this week. And we're going to finish off this story with the trial and her kids being found, unfortunately, deceased. So when we last spoke a couple weeks ago, we talked about that she was finally extradited to Rexburg from Hawaii on March 5th, 2020. And she made her actual first court appearance on March 6th. And Judge Farron Eddins, he reduced her bail to $1 million. But of course, she was still unable to post bond and remained in jail. Now, what they were holding her for was conspiracy, attempted murder, or murder, because of course they had not yet found the children. This is April 9th, 2020. There was some issues about Alex. If you remember, he mysteriously died. That was her brother and also kind of her bringer of death, her assassin, as it were.
As well as his attorney.
And as well as his attorney. And they actually found autopsy said that he actually died of natural causes and there were blood clots in his lungs. That was on May 8th, 2020. Remember, this is already COVID time. So I'm kind of wondering if both him and his lawyer got downed by COVID.
Yeah.
So she's hanging out in jail since March 6th. Finally, on June 9th, 2020, there was a search warrant that was served at Chad's home by the Rexburg Police Department, FBI, and Fremont County Sheriff's Office. And sadly, within hours, the remains of the children, JJ and Tylee, were discovered buried on the property. And I don't know if you guys remember from the past 2 episodes, but there was some talk about how Alex had taken something back to the pet cemetery. And Chad had mentioned in one of the phone calls about a pet cemetery. Well, it turns out that Tylee's remains were found at that pet cemetery near the fire pit. And JJ's remains were found near the pond on Chad's property.
Yes. And Alex's cell phone data placed him at Chad's backyard in these areas for roughly 2 hours.
Yeah. So obviously we're thinking that Alex was the one who actually buried these children down there. And Chad actually called Lori while the officers were on his property. And because of course, all of these phone calls are, what are they called? Recorded. Lori asked if they had seized anything, and Chad said no, they're still searching. And Chad told her to call the attorney, which was at the time Mark Means. And of course, Chad at this point got super busy. So between 9:50 a.m. and 10 a.m., he started transferring money to each one of his 3 kids. The total was $24,000, and he made deposits of $8,000 each to each one of his kids. And there was only like $4,000 left in that account. At 11:30 a.m., Chad was seen leaving his daughter's house across the street at a high rate of speed, even though he was told that he needed to stay or be accompanied by an officer. And he, of course, was quickly taken into custody and booked into Fremont County Jail on charges of concealment, distribution, or alteration of evidence. So, of course, the remains were found on his property. And go ahead.
If I may, I was going to jump in and ask, at one point, Chad's family allows their mom, who also passed away in this horrific fiasco, they started suspecting that after this and what's going on, that their father may have had something to do with their mom's death. So they actually exhumed her body. Do you remember in the timeline if this happens before or after the children are found?
I believe.
And incidentally, once they exhumed the body, they found that she was suffocated and there were bruises all over her body.
Yes. Trying to look through the timeline right now. That happened actually before. That was on December 11th of 2019.
When they exhumed her body?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this happened before. But I mean, I'm sure the children must have thought at this point that he had something to do with it because, again, he quickly got together with this woman whose children were missing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole lot of missing and death around, because her ex-husband had been killed too. Right. Yeah. So, yeah.
As a trigger warning, when these children are found, I'm just going to quickly say it, that Tylee was burned to death and JJ was taped all over and died of asphyxiation.
Yeah, which is horrifying.
They believed the Daybells that one had to be tied and bound in order for the demons to not escape their dead body.
I see.
Yeah.
See. So once these children were found, things, of course, went into the justice system and everything moves very slowly. So the prosecutors filed new charges against Lori on June 29th, which included 2 counts of conspiracy to commit destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence. Chad made his first court appearance via video from jail because, again, remember, this is COVID times. His bail was set at $1 million on June 10th, 2020. And Lori pleaded not guilty to misdemeanor resisting or obstruction officers, criminal solicitation to commit a crime, and contempt of court on July 15th, 2020. On July 2nd, sorry, I skipped one, prosecutors dismissed charges of desertion and non-support of children against Lori because apparently she killed them. So, that she didn't desert them. On August 27th, on August 21st, 2020, Chad appeared in front of District Judge Stephen Boyce and pleaded not guilty to his charges. And on August 27th, Chad's attorney, John Pryor, asked Boyce to dismiss the case against Chad, but that was denied. And on September 1st, 2020, Madison County prosecuting attorney Rob Wood filed a motion to combine the cases of Chad and Lori. And that took until March 2023 that they would have separate cases, as Lori did not waive her right to a speedy trial. And she also appeared at an arraignment in district court on September 10th, 2020, and pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of conspiracy to commit destruction, alteration, and concealment of evidence. So this was all this stuff about missing kids, right? And them destroying evidence. They were actually not charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder until May 24th, 2021. So that was like, how many months later? Almost like 8 months later.
Yeah.
And Lori was committed on June 8th, 2021 to the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, where a psychologist deemed her not fit for trial.
The judge, was adamant about not having any television. So this trial was not televised. Every now and then on Court TV and other outlets, you would see clips, but overall, they didn't want any television in there because they were afraid that she was going to play up to the camera during the trial. The trial only lasted 2 days, her trial, incidentally. And nonetheless, I think maybe I brought this up in episode 1, but she was still all about appearances, right? And presentation. Yeah. So she and, working with other inmates, the inmates were like, hey, if you want lipstick, use a Jolly Rancher and some water and we'll smear it on. And here's some eyeliner we made. So she did herself up to look presentable in the courtroom, despite being behind bars for
right, which we will get to that, because it was her trial just happened in 2023, but yeah. 2021 was a bunch of legal wrangling as far as she on June 24th, 2021, a grand jury in Arizona indicted Lori for conspiracy to commit murder in the death of her fourth husband, Charles Vallow.
Yeah.
So those Arizona proceedings were on hold while she faced the charges in Idaho. Meanwhile, Chad pleaded not guilty to all charges in the indictment. His children actually attended this meeting. July 29th, the prosecutors dropped the destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence charges against both of them. And on August 5th, 2021, prosecutors said they would seek the death penalty against Chad, stating, quote, the nature and magnitude of these crimes warrant the possibility of the highest possible punishment, end quote. On October 5th, the Daybell trial was moved from Fremont County to Ada County. And then on December 28th, 2021, Judge Boyce ordered that Mark Means, Lori's attorney, could no longer represent her. He cited a conflict of interest in representing both Daybells, as well as concerns about his legal competency. So that's all of 2021. So it's like a bunch of legal wrangling, figuring out which charges were going to happen first. So we get to 2022. On March 21st, 2022, John Pryor, Chad's attorney, requested to sever Chad's case from Lori's, but that was denied. However, it was later separated, like we spoke about.
Yeah.
On April 11th, 2022, Boyce issued a written order that Lori was now competent for trial, and she was released from the welfare facility, and her arraignment was set for April 19th. When she was arraigned on April 19th, she did not speak, and her new attorney, Jim Archibald, pleaded not guilty on her behalf. And then on May 2nd, 2022, prosecutors announced that they would also pursue the death penalty against Lori, but unfortunately, it was later ruled off the table by Boyce. And on May 26, 2022, Boyce announced that the trials would be held together in January 2023, but this was later changed because there was new evidence. Now, on August in 2022, Lori appeared in court and she was smiling. She was wearing a band on her ring finger. And that was when Lori's attorneys filed a motion against asking the cameras be banned from the courtroom. And Boyce granted that motion. And again, on October 6, 2022, Lori's case was put on hold again due to competency issues. But then a month later, she was found competent for trial, and that was postponed until April 3rd, 2023.
And this is something she contested and kept arguing about and was very upset about during this whole process. Eventually, she just starts to break mentally. She doesn't understand what's going on. She's not working well with this attorney and another attorney. It just becomes a complete mess, one which she is more or less creating to prolong this whole process.
Right, exactly. Which, again, they were arrested in 2021 and, now finally her trial starts on April 3rd, which was the jury selection began. The jury was finalized, and on April... Oh, go ahead.
Dominika, let's go back to the evidence they found.
Oh, yes.
In 2022. Are you referring to the print? Okay. Dominika, incidentally, that evidence they turned up included some fingerprints.
Ooh.
There were fingerprints from both Alex and Chad, mostly found on the duct tape. And then they found a strand of Lori's hair on JJ's black bag that his body was placed in.
Oh, okay. I guess the hair could have been like, well... they did live in the same house, but the fingerprints, that's pretty damning information, I would think.
She had always claimed that she was at home when, apparently they say that she was home when all of this happened, when the children were murdered. So,
yeah. So, and so the trial started, and Shibu Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah.
So go ahead. So were there transcripts of the trial?
So no. Well, not to my knowledge. I know that there are clips that one can go online and they can view different parts of the trial. What's interesting is that her defense decided to call no witnesses whatsoever.
Oh, that's interesting.
And their whole angle was that they blamed Chad and Alex themselves, and they started to paint Lori as a brainwashed victim. Yeah, so she was really the victim, just as the children were. She believed everything that Chad was telling her, including demons, possessing bodies, obviously of people that he felt needed to not be in the picture anymore. I mean, we're talking about his wife. We're talking about her children. Perhaps they were an inconvenience to the lifestyle that he wanted to have with Lori.
Yeah.
But yeah, so trial was 2 days. Deliberation was 7 hours. Prior to all this, when she's interrogated, one of her initial interrogations, she just she smiles an awful lot. It's kind of like the Stupor's Delight, where she knows she's getting away with something, and she knows that perhaps the way that her children were murdered was all for the good. Like, you get the sense, and it's the way she appeared on trial too, whatever photos or video footage we see of her. There's sort of more attention paid to her appearances and the perception of her rather than this actual crime, this heinous murders, these murders that took place. So she's very withdrawn, body language wise. She just kind of turtles up and she like enclaves while she's talking and giggling and just trying to smile and warm up to the interrogator. But for every question that really digs deep about, like, well, where's the children? What about the child neglect and all this sort of thing? It's very like, I don't know. You know, it's almost as though she's trained herself. Or that could be a result of being brainwashed by Chad to a point where she believes she really had nothing to do with this. This is otherworldly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I guess, as you mentioned, they reversed, right? Their initial saying that she couldn't stand trial to that she could indeed stand trial, right?
Right.
So I think, like, along the way, like, you know, you realize, and towards the end of this interrogation, you know, there's a line between belief, brainwashed, and murder. You know, there comes a point, especially if it's a religion that you believe in that has any sort of moral value. Even this is based on aliens and this sort of crazy thing and demons and the end of the world. You're fully aware, and I guess this is where they come up with that notion of what's going on, of what you're doing, of what this heinous crime is.
Right.
You know, there's no, you know, you can't be a hairdresser for years, know what's going on, and on a switch just because you meet someone and believe in their faiths and their theologies. You know what's happening to your children.
You're right. Right. Exactly.
7 counts. Guilty of 7 counts.
Well, and, you know, and the prosecutors, you know, they said she used money, power, and sex to get what she wanted, which was a new husband, got rid of her kids. And I think after all of the people who took the stand, including her sister, her supposed quote unquote friend, you know, it seemed very close to see that she was just totally insane. I mean, how do you, like, she used the Social Security benefits of her children. She was obsessed with Chad, and then she was really shady when people were asking about where her children were. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like she had knowledge that she did a bad thing because she lied. She didn't say, oh, I got rid of them because I got rid of the demons in their bodies, which is what an insane person would say. No, she lied. She lied to the babysitter. She lied to the school. So she tried to cover it up, which means that she had agency. I mean, she knew what she had done was wrong. There was lots of text messages that came out in trial as well between Lori and Chad. Also about eliminating zombies. So it's like the story itself is crazy, but at the same time, because she tried to cover it up and Chad tried to cover it up, I mean, it just shows that they knew what they had done was wrong. And so
so when you look at other cults, I mean, you have say the Manson family. These people followed this person. Were they brainwashed? Perhaps. A lot of them were insecure. Perhaps Lori was insecure, and this is why she did pageants and appearances were important to her. But those women that, went into that house and really massacred everyone were fully aware of what they were doing, right? But then you have an example of that fellow over at that monster over at the college campus who's grooming all these guys and girls to live with him. I'm blanking on his name, but we did a program about this fellow too, who basically convinced others to have sex with one another and to hit one another.
Right.
And they did. So it does become this question of like how much of it is brainwash and how much of it is like fully aware of the pain that you're inflicting upon others because you're being told to.
Right. And she did.
But murder crosses a line. To me,
and she wanted her Chad. She wanted her Chad, and she didn't want her children. And her children didn't like Chad, and she was like, "Okay, done and done." So, as we said, that the jury deliberated for 7 hours on May 12th. She was found guilty of murder and conspiracy to commit murder for her children. She was also found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder in the death of Tammy Daybell, and she was also found guilty of grand theft. And on July 31st, she was sentenced to 5 life sentences in prison, only 3 of which will run consecutively. Judge Stephen Boyce denied her any chance of parole, and the victim spoke at the sentencing. And she also spoke at the sentencing, quoting scripture and saying that she spoke to her dead children and they approved of her and what she had done to them. So she kept the crazy on until the very end. And then Chad Daybell's trial is expected to take place in April 2024.
Apparently, according to one of her cellmates, a younger incarcerated woman, in the middle of the night, Lori will talk to
her children.
Her children. And in the system itself, she's sort of assumed the motherly role. Where the really troubled and upset will open up to her. So
I see.
Pretty interesting too. The question remains, power, sex, murder. Does she take this path, do you think, Dominika, if she's not involved in this cult? If she doesn't fall into Chad's ideologies?
I honestly think that, like we've spoken about of other people, it takes that specific synergy of 2 people to start with the murder. And I think that she might have been capable of it, but it needed the synergy of him and all the crazy that he added to that and the obsession that they had to each other to essentially bring it to the murder. Is she a victim of Chad's? Well, she was the mother. And, as a mother, you're supposed to protect your children, not kill them. So I think, it's a 50-50. Like they are both responsible for it. But I don't know if she would have been capable of that without meeting Chad and the synergy of what that relationship gave to them. Mm-hmm. Pretty crazy case. Thank you for sticking with us over the 3 sessions. And we'll probably do definitely another episode when Chad goes on trial next year. And yeah, I mean, the evil
next year?
Next year, May 2024.
I mean, wow.
I know. Right? That's the justice system takes a while to go through.
Wow.
So, yeah. And so thank you for sticking with us. And it's October is it next week, October? So we're going to have some really fun Halloween things coming at you. And yeah, we'll be back next week. This This episode was sponsored by The Creek Killer, book 1 in the Harriet Harper thriller series written by me, Dominika Best. What would you do if you read the police found your body in a creek? Find out in The Creek Killer, available on Amazon. Thank you for joining me and listening to this episode. If you like my show, please give me a rating and review. It helps other listeners find this podcast. Follow Dominika Best Presents The Deviant Mind wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit thebeststorytellingnetwork.com, where you'll find show notes, my books, links to social media, and much more. Join my Patreon for special subscriber perks, like 2 extra exclusive episodes a month and a Q&A with me at patreon.com/The Deviant Mind Podcast. Until next time.